Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it's time for the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. Alright, first question. What are your thoughts on Nordic curls for building strength and athleticism? Well, I tend to be a pretty big fan of hamstrings in general for athleticism, and it has to do with stabilizing the knee joint. And keeping in mind, I do coach quite a few athletes who compete in a number of different sports. And again, I'm big on hamstring work. Here's my issue with the Nordic curl specifically. These are also oftentimes called natural glute ham raises. It's where essentially you use something besides the proper device to do a glute ham raise. They tend to be really, really hard, first of all. They tend to be harder because you don't have adjustments. So basically, you're trying to go straight to the level of difficulty that I do on a hard setting on a glute ham raise when you do these. They can be very, very hard on the knees. And a lot of times when people do them different ways, such as having someone hold your ankles down and you do these like on a little pad on the ground, you just catch yourself at the bottom and push yourself back up with the arms, right? So almost like a push-up, because again, it may be too hard for you to do with your body weight. Again, I personally don't feel that it's worth the risk, the possible knee injuries and everything else that are associated with this just to build your hamstrings up. I would say in this case, if you don't have access to a glute ham raise, you're probably better off just finding a way to do a hamstring curl. Okay, you're better off finding a way to do a hamstring curl. That's what I would recommend in this case if you don't have access to a proper GHR. Because again, there's no magical benefit to doing this. The Nordic curls, the way people do them, it's no different tension on your hamstring than a hamstring curl would be, which you could do with a towel. Have someone do them with a towel as a partner. You could hook bands up, do them if you don't have access to a hamstring curl machine. Because this is a lot of times what happens. People will be in a commercial gym where they don't have access. You know, and what I would say to most people, if you're really serious about strength and athleticism and you have a home gym, you're going to get a glute ham raise and a GHR eventually. It's going to happen. And that's what you need to be focused on, the money and the space for those, rather than trying to find fixes and find some other way to do hamstring curls. And by that same token, people say, well, I'm over at an athletic gym and they don't have a glute ham raise. Well, it's not an athletic gym then. Okay, it is not a sports-related or strength-related gym if it doesn't have a GHR. You can probably find a gym in your area that has some of this stuff. Again, plenty of my clients at this point have found gyms that have a reverse hyper. And these are people all over the place. They are out there. And the majority of you live in big enough cities, just statistically, that you have access to a gym with all this equipment. You just have to look around for it. All right, next question. How often does an average guy need to deload on a conjugate system? They may not need to deload ever. The majority of my clients do not deload, by the way. For those curious. Again, my clients don't always do exactly what you see me doing. And here's the thing with it. Life will let you deload. Life tends to let you deload. And if I keep my lifters below an overreach state and I don't push them to really high volumes, because you guys have seen me do some higher volumes, especially near the end when I have a deload coming, and therefore I'm overreaching and I benefit more from the deload. And again, I want to remind people, and I don't want to get into anything about my personal life, but I've tried to tell you guys repeatedly, I don't deload for training purposes. I deload for life purposes and make it work with my training. My life dictates the deloads. My life outside of the training, the things that people don't see, I have to deload sometimes. It's just necessary because of what's going on in my life. So I train accordingly. Most of my lifters, we don't have to factor that in. You know, when they end up deloading, they deload when they go on vacations. They deload when they get sick. We make it work around their life. You shouldn't need to deload usually. If your total training volume and workloads are appropriate, you shouldn't need to deload. At most, I'll have guys do a lighter week. And what do we mean a lighter week? Well, they still do all the max effort and dynamic work. We just trim their supplemental lifts out so that they can recover. If they've been pushing too hard, they're getting some inflammation, little nagging injuries. What do? We cut most of the accessory work out. right? One of my guys is going to be doing that this coming week. Of course, this video is being made like almost a month before that. But next week, or this coming week, or current week, I guess, for him, that's exactly what he's doing. We're taking all his supplemental lifts out other than some rows and reverse hypers and a little bit of incline benching. And he's just doing his max and his speed work. Because he's starting to get some low back pain, starting to get some hip pain, things like that. It's time to just back off for him for a week. And then we'll go back into normal training. But it's not a true deload because we're still maxing out. Still doing his speed work. We're still doing a few hard sets on the supplemental lifts. They're still limit sets. We're just taking the total volume way down. Okay, and that's the difference. Big difference there. But if it's programmed right, you generally shouldn't need to deload. All right, next question. I bruised my ribs with a belt to the point my bottom left rib hurts when some movements, and now it limits me on some exercises. Is it this? This is the second time it's happened to me. Last time it was around a year ago, and it took a few weeks to heal, and now it probably will be the same. Am I wearing the belt wrong, too tight, or is the belt too wide, thick for me? I usually put the belt somewhere between the middle of the belt of my belly button. Yeah, the middle of the parts of my belly button. What should I do to prevent this? I'm not skinny, although I'm relatively lean. 11 to 12% body fat, 175, 5'9". Intermediate lifter, I have a 13 millimeter belt. 13 millimeter belts are notorious for this if you wear them too tight. And I know because I have done this very thing that you were describing, where I felt like it pulled an intercostal and the whole rib cage hurt bad because I had my belt on too tight and I missed a heavy box squat, like a deep box squat too. I missed a PR, got stapled, and it pulled that muscle. So here's what I'm going to say to you. Your belt is too tight. Belt's too tight. A lot of guys put the belt on and they think it should be constrictive. You should be able to put fingers inside the belt. Like your belt should be snug, but not so tight that it restricts anything. And again, what I mean, you should be able to put, when your belt is put on, whether it's your lever belt setting, your prong belt, whatever you're doing, you should be able to reach over and take all the fingers on one hand and put them inside the belt. You should be able to slip them in front. Okay? We're not wearing the belt so that we can have something restricting us. We're wearing a belt so that you have something that you can push your abs against, right? So that when you brace, your abdominal wall can press against it to increase intra-abdominal pressure, which leads to better core strength, better core development, improved neuromuscular efficiency, so that we can lift more weight on a single, on working sets, right? So that we get better performance, which leads to better strength and hypertrophy outcomes. That's why we wear a belt. It should not be restrictive. And it sounds like you've got it a notch too tight. That's what it sounds like to me. Loosen it up a notch. Follow the rule I just gave you. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.